Our story begins in Denville, New Jersey, where I was born. When I was young, I was sent to St. Cecilia's school. It was a Catholic school. Here I learned many things. Then, one day, in 2nd grade, I came to the realization that I wanted to be a teacher. Why? The desk. My teacher, Mrs. Sullivan, had a desk, and I was so jealous of it. She had so many cool things on it, and I wanted to be just like that. Like any smart kid, I had a backup plan, which was to become a mechanic. The only problem was that I knew nothing about cars, and I wasn't even into cars. I still know nothing about cars. But I was really into pirates. Learning about pirates helped me learn a lot about history as well. I had a copy of this movie, Treasure Island, made in the 50s, that I was absolutely in love with. Needless to say, I read the book as soon as I could. With this came the beginning of an interest in history. When I was younger, I got into Boy Scouts. I hated every waking moment I spent being a scout, yet we always went hiking around town. One of the places we went to was called Wildcat Ridge. Back in the day, it used to be an iron mine. You can see all the ruins of old houses, all throughout the woods, as well as old mines. The mine shaft you see here was closed, and so now it serves as a home for bats, but it's still a really cool place to go. There's even an old cemetery where all the miners are buried. The entire hillside is just covered in white crosses and broken tombstones. On the other side of town was a place called Mount Hope. This too was an old iron mine. There are huge pits everywhere where the mines used to be. Down the road from there was the Fort Foch House. The man who had run the mines had lived here, and supposedly George Washington had stayed a night. Opposite the mines was the Picatinny Arsenal, which was a military base. Sometimes we got to go inside and look around. So, why am I telling you this? Going to these places gave me a chance to see history right around my house. Questions like who these people were, and what their lives were like, really got me thinking. I also started watching the History Channel, back when it was good. I watched shows like Wild West Tech with this strange man. There were shows that helped me inspire me to learn more. I watched The Revolution, which got me into the American Revolution. Like a lot of kids interested in history, wars were the most interesting to learn about because they were the most exciting. But that didn't stop me from watching shows like The Presidents, another favorite of mine, which detailed the administrations of all the presidents from Washington to Bush. And for some reason I got really into the Titanic as well. Like the boat, not the movie, but the movie's not bad. When I was in 6th grade, I decided I wanted to leave Catholic school. I was sent to public school. Our public school was called Copeland Middle School. The transition was very hard, but I met some pretty cool people. These were the first real teachers I ever had. I was very excited to get to history class on the first day. My teacher's name was Mrs. Eisler. She turned out to be a pretty stern woman, and not too many people liked her. Unfortunately, I was one of them. I was very upset that my first public school teacher had been such a letdown. The next year was much better, though. I had a woman named Mrs. Petuvas. Everyone loved her. She was honest, funny, and most importantly, she respected us. Even in college, there were educators who treat their students like children. To have someone who took you seriously meant everything to us. That year was also the year she was retiring. It was very interesting to see this woman who had done so much good, now just done. One of my math teachers was named Mr. Young. He was absolutely terrifying, and I mean terrifying, but behind that was someone who really cared. That next year, I had a math teacher named Mrs. Bohr. I watched as the class walked all over her, and I promised myself that I would not be like her. My next step was Mars Knolls High School. It was here that I really solidified the idea that I wanted to become a teacher. There were a lot of educators who made an impression on me in my time at high school. Some were bad, others were good. Mr. Myers was one of the worst. He was my sophomore geometry teacher. When I told him that I had failed the pre-HESPA, he laughed at me, shrugged, and said, "That sucks." It's that kind of callousness that people hate. My junior year, I had a history teacher named Miss Velasquez. She would hand us worksheets and tell us to complete them by the end of class. Once again, I promised myself that I would not be like that. As I said, there were also fantastic teachers. One of them was my German teacher, Herr Albin. I had a class with this man every other day for 4 years of my life. He was not an easy teacher, but he showed us how to really learn a language. It's not just going to pop into your mind one day. You have to work for it. Sometimes it's the people that challenge you the most that you respect the most. Another was my anthropology teacher, Mr. Higgins. He was endlessly interesting. He was able to break down complex and complicated information so that we could understand everything. Not to mention the fact that he was really funny. Next, there was Mr. Lipson. He taught my European history class. Mr. Lipson spent all his spare time working to make his class better. He made learning really enjoyable because he was right there alongside us. He took us on trips, brought us themed food for all occasions, and was always there if we needed something. He taught me that if you want to be a teacher, you have to be in it 110%. Lastly, there was Mr. Kane, my history teacher. I had Mr. Kane 3 years in a row. He was a man with impeccable logic, which I always admired greatly. In the same way as Herr Albin, he challenged us to be the best we could be. My senior year, I took an independent study with Mr. Kane. Basically, I asked him to show me how to be a teacher. He showed me how to write lesson plans and make lessons and to make exams. He even let me teach 2 of his classes. The first one, I didn't really know what I was doing and I wasn't prepared for it. Obviously, it didn't go well. From this, I learned that teachers should always be prepared for anything. The second went much better. I learned a lot about what it means to be a teacher from that study. No one should take the job lightly. I put a ton of work into it, and I was very proud. All in all, I learned a lot from these men and women. My hope is that I can have the same positive effects on my students. Last year, I got the chance to become an interpreter at Stony Point Battlefield in New York State. My job is to inform the public about the history of the battlefield. I really enjoy my job because I get to explain history to everyone that comes in, not to mention the fact that we get to fire a cannon. My parents have also been a huge help. They support me at every turn as well as taking me on cool trips to places like Gettysburg or Hyde Park. Oftentimes, my brother would come to me for help with his history projects. I always enjoyed helping him out and helping explain things to him. All of these people and events have come together to give me a deep appreciation for history and education, which I am excited to share with others. My only hope is that I can be a credit to the profession which I am so honored to join. With that said, thank you for watching.